Hi, hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. We are back with the glossary of legal terms. The first phrase today is wise stakeholder agreement. A wise stakeholder agreement is a contractual arrangement involving three parties forming a wise structure of shared responsibility. It is often used when two stakeholders need to collaborate through a central, neutral third party. The agreement outlines roles, obligations, and mutual benefits among all three participants. It is commonly found in joint ventures, public-private partnerships, or shared infrastructure projects. Its design ensures balanced cooperation while minimizing conflict. The next term is relict. In legal terms, a relict usually refers to a surviving spouse, especially a widow, who remains after the death of a partner. The word also carries historical usage in inheritance and succession law. It determines the rights of the surviving spouse to property and estate. Modern laws often replace the term with a surviving spouse in statutes. The concept remains central to family and property law. The next phrase is satisfy judgment. To satisfy judgment means to comply with and fulfill the obligations imposed by a court's decision. It may involve payment of money, transfer of property, or performance of duties. Failure to satisfy judgment can lead to enforcement actions like a garnishment or seizure. It marks the closure of litigation in practical terms. Its scope lies in civil procedure and enforcement law. The next term is dispensation. Dispensation means an exemption or relaxation from the general rule of law or regulation. It may be granted by a competent authority for special circumstances. In a legal and religious context, it allows flexibility in applying strict rules. It ensures fairness where rigid application of law would cause hardship. Dispensation is usually temporary and specific to a case. The next phrase is best interests of the child. The best interests of the child is a guiding principle in a family law that prioritizes a child's welfare in a custody, adoption, and guardianship decisions. Courts assess factors such as emotional well-being, safety, stability, and developmental needs. This principle overrides parental rights when necessary to protect the child. It is flexible, allowing judges to consider individual circumstances. Internationally, it is recognized as a core standard in a child protection and a human rights law. The next term is incapacity. Incapacity refers to the legal or factual inability of a person to perform certain acts or exercise rights. It may be physical, mental, or legal, such as minority, insanity, or insolvency. In law, incapacity prevents individuals from entering into contracts, managing property, or making valid legal decisions. The scope of incapacity is determined by statutes, medical assessments, and judicial declarations. It plays a crucial role in a guardianship, labor law, criminal liability, and contractual obligations. The next term is leasing. Leasing is a contractual arrangement in which one party, that is the lessor, grants another, that is lessee, the right to use property for a specified time in exchange for payment. It is commonly used for real estate, vehicles, equipment, and intellectual property. Leasing allows the lessee to access assets without a full ownership. The agreement outlines terms such as rent, duration, maintenance duties, and termination conditions. It is a flexible financing and a resource utilization tool. The next term is bill. A bill is a proposed piece of legislation submitted to a legislative body for discussion and approval. It can be introduced by members of the legislature or, in some systems, by the executive. Bills must pass several readings, debates, and votes before becoming law. They may be classified as public, private, or hybrid depending on their scope. Once approved and signed, a bill becomes an enforceable statute. The next phrase is religion clause. The religion clause is a constitutional or legal provision that it defines the relationship between religion and the state. It often ensures freedom of religion, prohibits establishment of a state religion, and it protects individual belief practices. In a democratic frameworks, it serves to balance secular governance with a religious liberty. Courts use this clause to resolve disputes involving education, worship, and government policies. It embodies the principle of neutrality in matters of faith. The next phrase is bill in equity. A bill in equity is a formal written petition historically used in courts of equity to seek remedies other than monetary damages. It initiated proceedings where legal remedies were inadequate, such as injunctions, specific performance, or trusts. The bill outlined the facts, legal grounds, and a relief sought from the court. Though equity and law are merged in many modern systems, the concept survives in equitable remedies. It reflects the principle that justice may require flexible, non-monetary solutions. The next phrase is gratuitous promise. A gratuitous promise is a promise made without any consideration or exchange of value. In a contract law, it is generally not enforceable because there is no legal obligation created. Such promises may be based on moral duty rather than legal duty. However, under certain conditions, like a promissory estoppel, they may become binding. This concept distinguishes enforceable contracts from mere social or moral commitments. The next phrase is artificial person. An artificial person is a legal entity created by law, such as corporation, association, or government body. Unlike natural persons, they do not have a physical existence but can own property, sue, and be sued. Their rights and duties are limited to what the law grants them. This concept allows large organizations to act as a single unit in legal and economic activities. Artificial persons are essential for modern commerce and governance. The next term is legacy. Legacy is a gift of money, property, or assets left to someone through a will. It is a legal mechanism by which a person distributes wealth after death. Legacy can be general, specific, demonstrative, or residuary depending on how they are defined. The term may also refer metaphorically to the lasting impact or reputation a person leaves behind. Proper drafting of legacies helps avoid disputes in estate distribution. The next phrase is moot court. A moot court is a simulated court proceeding used primarily for legal education and training. Law students argue hypothetical cases, practicing research, drafting, and oral advocacy. Moot courts replicate real-world courtroom settings, including judges and opposing counsels. They develop practical legal skills without actual litigation. Mooting is often a compulsory part of legal curricula worldwide. The next phrase is incidental beneficiary. An incidental beneficiary is someone who may benefit from a contract between two other parties but has no legal right to enforce it. For example, if a city contracts a company to build a park, nearby shopkeepers may benefit from increased foot traffic, but it cannot sue if the contract is breached. The law distinguishes them from intended beneficiaries who do have enforceable rights. The concept limits contractual obligations to parties or those clearly intended. Its scope protects contract freedom while preventing unintended liability. The next phrase is green card holder. A green card holder is a person who has been granted lawful permanent residence in the United States. They have the right to live and work in the US indefinitely. However, they are not full citizens and cannot vote in federal elections. They may apply for citizenship after fulfilling residency and other requirements. Their status can be revoked for certain violations such as serious crimes. The next phrase is as is. The term as is commonly used in contracts, especially in sales, to indicate that the buyer accepts the item in its present condition. It means the seller makes no warranties or guarantees about a quality or defects. Once the transaction is complete, the buyer cannot hold the seller liable for issues that arise later. This clause shifts the risk from the seller to the buyer. It is often used in a real estate, vehicle, and second-hand goods transactions. The next phrase is mootness doctrine. The mootness doctrine is a principle of judicial review that prevents courts from deciding cases where issues are no longer live. If circumstances change so that the decision would have no practical effect, the case is dismissed as moot. This ensures judicial resources are used only for actual controversies. Exceptions may exist for cases capable of repetition but evading review. It upholds the constitutional requirement of a genuine dispute in many systems. The next phrase is police power. Police power refers to the authority of the state to regulate behavior and enforce order for the welfare, health, and safety of its citizens. It's a fundamental aspect of sovereignty and a constitutional law. It allows restrictions on private rights when necessary for the common good. Courts often assess whether such power is exercised reasonably and proportionately. Its scope includes zoning, public health, safety regulations, and morality laws. The next term is legal. Legal refers to anything that is permitted, recognized, or enforceable under the law. It distinguishes lawful actions from illegal ones. The term applies to rights, duties, procedures, and systems governed by legislation and judicial authority. Legal frameworks ensure order and justice in society. The opposite term is illegal or unlawful.